When the gates opened, the sound wasn't loud. It was worse, a low mechanical groan, steel against steel, final and absolute, the kind of sound that erased hope. The prisoner stepped out into the freezing night, boots crunching on gravel. Above him, floodlights washed the yard in harsh white. No shadows, no corners to hide in. This man had a name. Once. The man was dressed neatly, hands folded across his chest as if someone had taken care to arrange him. No wallet, no phone, no ID. Carved shallow into the concrete beside the body was a symbol investigators couldn't immediately place. It meant nothing. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the symbol. Memories surfaced slowly and willingly. A different case. Years ago. One that had ended badly. One that had never officially existed. It was part of a federal task force, he finally said. Domestic terror. Black sites. People who disappeared instead of going to trial. You saying this guy's a ghost? That night, Holloway returned to the symbol, the square, the line. He overlaid the image on a floor plan Vasquez had given him, an old one, smuggled out years ago. His breath caught. It wasn't random. It was architectural. A cell. One specific cell inside ADX Florence. The most isolated unit in the entire prison. Inmate Zero's cell. Holloway felt the weight of it crash down on him. This wasn't just a murder investigation. It was a message. A chess move. Someone wanted attention. Someone wanted fear. And someone wanted the world to believe the monster was already behind bars. His phone buzzed. Again. This time, the message was just one sentence. They're moving him. By the time Holloway reached the edge of the prison complex, the snow had stopped. The night was painfully clear. He watched from a distance as floodlights flared to life and a convoy rolled through the gates. ADX Florence swallowed them whole. Hours later, inside the most secure wing of the prison, guards unlocked a door that hadn't been opened in years. They expected resistance. They expected rage. What they found instead made one of them step back in horror, because the cell was empty, and carved into the concrete wall, fresh and unmistakable, was the same symbol found beside the bodies. A square, divided by a single line, and beneath it, written in neat, deliberate letters, were four words that would change everything. I was never alone. Warden Thomas Kessler stood in the control room, staring at the wall of monitors like they might accuse him. Detective Mark Holloway didn't have clearance, but clearance didn't matter when panic set in. The liaison hesitated, then handed him a temporary badge. Then, why kill people? A soft laugh. Because experiments end when oversight begins. The line went dead. By morning, the fallout had begun. A bureau official resigned unexpectedly. The contractor's headquarters was raided, then quietly cleared. News outlets ran watered-down stories about administrative irregularities at a federal prison. No mention of a missing inmate. No mention of bodies. Holloway met Vasquez one last time. This time in a parking garage, rain hammering the concrete above them. One of them smiled. Holloway felt a chill crawl up his spine. Then why show me this? Because, the man said, standing. You're going to help us decide what happens next. Mark Holloway learned quickly that there were prisons worse than ADX Florence. This one didn't have a name. It existed beneath a decommissioned Cold War facility, buried under layers of rock and deniability. No maps, no oversight committees, no paper trail that survived longer than a week. The men who worked there rotated identities the way others rotated shifts. Holloway was given clothes without labels, food without taste, time without markers. The man who had abducted him, who called himself simply Carter, visited once a day, always calm, always polite. "You're not a prisoner," Carter said during their third meeting. "You're an asset." I didn't agree to this, Holloway replied. Carter smiled. Neither did he. Inmate Zero's real name, Holloway learned, was Jonathan Hale, former behavioral systems architect. Once contracted by the government to design predictive models for criminal escalation algorithms meant to identify threats before they acted, Hale had gone further than anyone expected. He didn't just predict behavior, he learned how to shape it. He discovered that isolation doesn't silence people, Carter explained. It clarifies them. Strip away noise, routine, identity, what's left is intent. And that scared you, Holloway said. It terrified everyone. Hale had begun testing his theories inside sanctioned programs, prison populations, solitary units, supermax environments. ADX Florence was supposed to be his cage. Instead, it became his laboratory. He never escaped, Carter said. He evolved. Holloway was brought to the observation level the next day, through reinforced glass. He saw Jonathan Hale sitting on the concrete bench, hands folded, posture relaxed. He looked thinner than the photos, older, but his eyes were exactly as Holloway remembered from the files, calm, focused, unafraid. Hale looked up and smiled. "Detective Holloway," he said through the speaker, "you took your time. You murdered people." Holloway snapped. Hal tilted his head. No, I revealed them. The bodies were necessities, Hal interrupted gently. They were part of the system that buried me. Systems resist exposure. They apply pressure until threats disappear. You're talking about human beings. So are you, Hale replied. That's why you're here. The truth unfolded slowly, methodically, the way Hale liked it. The murders had been committed by operatives inside the same intelligence ecosystem that had once controlled him. When oversight risked uncovering the illegal transfer, the system turned inward. Eliminating liabilities, Hale hadn't ordered the killings. He'd predicted them, and left clues to prove it. The symbol wasn't a signature, Hale said. It was a mirror. I wanted investigators to see the shape of the cell, and ask who built it. And you know I would, Holloway asked. I calculated the probability, Hale said. You had the right combination of skepticism and disobedience. Carter watched from the corner, arms crossed. This is why we can't let him go, he said. He doesn't need weapons. He weaponizes people. Hale smiled again. And yet you keep listening. What Hale wanted wasn't freedom. It was leverage. He'd mapped the psychological profiles of everyone who interacted with him over the years: guards, administrators, analysts, contractors. He understood how pressure flowed through institutions, how fear climbed chains of command. He could collapse the system from the inside. All prisons are experiments, Hale said. They just pretend not to be. Holloway felt the weight of it pressed down on him. So what happens now? Carter answered. Now, we decide whether to erase him or use him. The decision came faster than Holloway expected. A vote held in a room he wasn't allowed to enter. A consensus built on fear and ambition. Hale would remain alive, isolated, monitored but active. A consultant. A ghost advisor feeding insights into counterterrorism, domestic surveillance, behavioral forecasting. A prisoner who worked for his captors. You'll help us, Carter told Hale. Hale nodded calmly. I always have. And you, Carter said, turning to Holloway. We'll write the official version. Holloway stared at him. You want me to lie. We want you to survive. They released Holloway 2 days later. No charges. No explanations. Just a warning wrapped in a handshake. Back home, the world felt wrong. Too loud. To open. He tried to return to work, but the case files were gone. Reeves's death had been quietly reclassified, the journalist's disappearance attributed to mental health issues, the attorney's suicide accepted without question. ADX Florence released a statement. No inmates unaccounted for, no irregularities detected. The public moved on. Holloway didn't. 3 months passed. Then a body was found in Oregon, a mid-level intelligence auditor. Cause of death, accidental overdose. But carved into the wooden railing near the scene was a familiar shape. A square. A line. Holloway felt the blood drain from his face when he saw the photo. That night. His phone buzzed. And no number. You said you weren't responsible, Holloway said the moment he answered. I wasn't, Hale replied calmly. This one surprised me too. Then it's starting again. No, Hale said softly. It never stopped. Holloway understood then. Hale hadn't dismantled the system. He'd infected it. Others had learned from him, observed his methods, replicated his thinking. The prison had done what it was designed to do, created something stronger, colder, more precise. Walls didn't contain ideas. They refined them. You still think I'm the danger, Hale said. But I was only the proof of concept. The call ended. Weeks later, Holloway stood outside ADX Florence, staring at the concrete fortress under a pale winter sun. The strongest prison on Earth. A monument to control. Inside, men sat alone in silence, watched by cameras, studied by systems that never slept. And somewhere beneath layers of stone and secrecy, a mind continued to work. Holloway turned away. Knowing the truth would never see daylight, knowing the story would be buried, sanitized, denied. But also knowing this, they thought the monster was behind bars. They were wrong. The prison itself had learned how to think, and once it did, it never stopped. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Subscribe, and don't look away.